accountants in particular do find that a bit of a challenge.
Maybe their project, if they're self-implementing, might be going off the rails a little bit. What should they look for?
If you take that new amazing technology but try to apply your existing process, you're never going to get a good result.
Unless you're buying software because of a handshake and a bar bill, there's a problem that you're solving, right? Why is enablement important? It's particularly in B2B SaaS sales. Like, why do we even have that?
I mean, it's a good question. Change management, it's never that easy, unfortunately. It's not like everyone's going to wake up and say, oh, actually, yeah, this is amazing.
You've painted a great picture of what good looks like to give them an idea of a standard that they can go and push their vendors forward.
The absolute number one that I think everyone should have.
This week, we're talking about customer success and the pivotal role that it plays in proper digital transformation for accounting firms. I'm talking to Aleisha Hales, who has had key roles at Xero and Silverfin in really helping firms install critical workflows that are often very, very disruptive. And we talk about what to expect if you're an accounting or bookkeeping firm from your vendor. We talk about what the standards should be for proper sales support and enablement in our space. And we talk about how we can make sure we get the right balance between self-sufficiency as an accounting firm and also looking at the obligations that the vendor should have to make sure that accounting and bookkeeping firms get maximum value from the products that they buy. Really, really excited about this episode. So let's get into it.
So I currently head up the customer success team for Silverfin. Been with Silverfin for almost 4 years. And we work with all of our customers. Our job really is to support them as they implement new software, but also go through that change management process for their accounts production, compliance, etc. Before working at Silverfin, I was at Xero, as you know, worked with you for a little while. I was there for about 4 years, again, in the partner consulting team. I worked with a lot of the large and strategic partners of Xero, helping them on their digital journeys. And then what seems like an absolute lifetime ago, I was in practice. So I was a manager of a mid-sized firm. I headed up the small business services and digitalised that area of the practice. So hopefully it means I've sat both sides of the fence.
Definitely. And yeah, knowing what that feels like from that other side is so valuable, isn't it? So yeah. I'm going to do that classic thing that interviewers do where they ask you a question that they know the answer to, but it just brings the audience and everyone listening up to speed, because some people will recognise this and some won't. But why is enablement important? It's particularly in B2B SaaS sales. Like, why do we even have that?
I mean, it's a good question. And I guess I'm always going to be biased in my answer, aren't I? Because of my job. But it is so important because when you're implementing new software, so particularly when we're talking SaaS, it's often something new, and we're challenging a way of working that has been around for a really long time. And in industries like accountancy, that's really common, right? Like, we've worked the same way for a really long period of time, and now we're in this technological change era where the world's shuffling under our feet, and people can buy new technology. But if you buy a new platform, whether that's Silverfin, whether it's a bookkeeping platform, whether it's a practice management platform, if you take that new amazing technology but try to apply your existing process, you're never going to get a good result. You're just gonna, if you've got bad processes, your processes remain bad. So the purpose of enablement is really to make sure that you're getting the best from what you're paying for, because that's in the interest of the company as well. Like, it doesn't work for me if you buy my software and it doesn't work and you give it up after a year. I want you to use it. I want you to love it. I want you to grow with it. And that's really what the enablement team's job is, to make sure that you're getting that.
Yeah, because really speaking, unless you're buying software because of a handshake and a bar bill, there's a problem that you're solving, right? And you need to make sure that you're actually using that tool to solve the problem. And we used to see this a lot, like you mentioned there, that our kind of experience together at Xero. But in the early days of that, and you probably would have had this as well, you're trying to put Xero in and they'll say, well, will it do this thing that Sage did? Like, here's my Sage process. And they just want to, in some way, just lift and shift and have that comfort. And I don't know if that's because of a degree of squeamishness maybe about change and disruption or what it is, but I totally agree. Like, you've got to take that opportunity, haven't you, to really look at what you're doing and level a business up, I guess.
Yeah, and look, you certainly can take your existing process and lift and shift it, but are you ever going to get the benefit of that new platform and a new way of working if you always do that? I don't think you are. And it's finding that balance between it not being broken, so don't fix it, but maybe it's just a case of enhancing your processes, making small changes so that the technology does more of the work for you. And it's really easy to take on new technology and do the training on it. Like, everyone's got online training, we can sit through a training video, looks super easy, but actually in practice it's the change management piece, it's the people, it's navigating those processes where accountants in particular do find that a bit of a challenge. And that's where, if you get a good enablement team that can support you through that, that makes all the difference, because that's where the value sits, that answering those problems, as you say, like, there's a problem that I need to solve. How do I, as a customer success manager, make sure that my product solves that problem?
So where are the most common areas that people might fall down if they're just left to their own device and they don't have a customer success manager or enablement team or whatever the company calls it? They're on their own. Where are they most likely to fall down, do you think, in your experience?
I think there's a couple of key areas. The first one is jumping into a new software and not really allowing for the investment and the change that's required. And I think sometimes we can do that a little bit naively. We can get really excited that there's this new software and it's going to be amazing, it's going to solve all my problems, it's going to double my chargeable time, like half my chargeable time, even double it. But if you haven't planned for that, and you haven't considered, actually there is a real investment of time, both in training, like you're learning something new, you're never going to do as good a job on it straight away as you have done on software you've known for 20 years. So we have to allow for that investment of time. We have to be really clear on the vision that we want to achieve. A software is, we're never going to find a unicorn product. Like, where there are problems we can solve, there are problems we might not be able to solve, but we can alleviate them. But we have to be really clear on what success looks like from us from the outset, rather than diving in and just expecting it to fall into place. And I think for accountancy firms where we're up against it, everyone's working really hard, there's no one sat in an accountancy practice, or certainly not one I've met, who just sits there twiddling their thumbs with no work to do. How do you keep that front and centre when you've got all these other things and all these other deadlines going on? And I think that's the biggest fall down is that I've seen, is where that vision maybe isn't clear, that investment is underestimated, and then we hit those inevitable change management blockers and we've got no resource or capacity to really address them. And so what probably would be a really amazing product or a really amazing project ends up feeling quite negative and feeling quite stressful.
Yeah. And so do you think then that for firms that want to stay on the sort of front edge of technology and they want to be able to adopt these tools and improve themselves around these sort of waves of tech that come around, do you think there's going to be a greater need for them to have someone, as you say, like sat around twiddling their thumbs waiting to look at things? Obviously they'd never have time to do that, but someone dedicated to this, that's keeping their eyes open for what's going on, and then I suppose being in a position to project manage things in the practice. Do you see that as a role happening in firms, or is that actually something the external vendor should be doing?
It's a really good question, and I don't think there's a right answer. I definitely think there's a place for it in the accounting industry, whereas perhaps 10 years ago there wasn't. We're starting to see changes to those roles. Whether that's a standalone job role within a firm, to be that project manager, to be head of digital transformation. For larger firms that might work. For smaller firms, that's probably a bit overkill, right? But regardless of whether it's a full-time role, I do think it's an aspect of an accountant's role that we maybe haven't seen before. And when we're looking at hiring people, that skill set has to encompass some of these things, because this pace is never going to slow down. Like the pace of technology, the speed at which we're seeing new things come in, AI, like it's going to supercharge that. So we have to get better at that. Now, in terms of should the vendor be doing that, I feel quite strongly that if you are a vendor and you're selling your platform and it's a new way of working, new service, like there has to be investment from you as well. Like it's just as important that I put in the investment and give time to making sure my customer is successful as them putting in the investment to make sure they're going to get the best from me. I think that's a collaboration. How that looks for a firm, I don't think there's one size fits all. I think it really comes down to the accountant, the individual, what the skill set they've got internally and what they need. And that's why the role of enablement, for me, I think is more about understanding that and guiding that relationship for that individual customer, rather than having a tick list of things we do and don't do for one person.
And there's always an inherent difficult balance with that, isn't there? Because particularly with SaaS products, they tend not to be really, really expensive. So when you think of an SAP or an Oracle or something like that, they always come with really hefty implementation projects, don't they? But typically SaaS products, like if we go back to Xero again, it's like 20 quid a month, right? And okay, maybe you multiply that up by a couple of hundred clients if you're going to do it with a firm, but still, like, it's not going to wear a 20 grand implementation cost, right? So how do you think vendors can strike that balance of offering the right level of support, but also keeping it scalable? Is it sort of an opt-in, opt-out thing for partners, or I don't know how that works. Like how can that work, do you think?
Yeah, like, it's a great one, and I don't think anyone's got it nailed. I don't think there's one clear answer. You're right, when it comes to things like Xero is a great example. Some firms, some accountancy practices will be able to pick up Xero, roll that out, migrate clients over with no help from Xero at all. They'll just get it. Others won't. Does that ability to adopt that technology depend on the size of the firm, like, or the amount they're spending? I don't think it does. So as a vendor, how do we, exactly as you're saying, how do we strike that balance? And I think we do need a customer journey. We do need some parameters in place. We can't go and sit next to everyone to do every migration and help them as much as I'd perhaps love to. But whilst you've got that journey, you have to allow for flexibility and that appropriate experience of the customer. If your customer is really confident in using new technology, we probably don't need to spend 3-4 different sessions with them talking about change management and basics of getting to grips. Actually, what they might need help with is how we're passing that on to our clients, for example, how we're getting the most. So I think for enablement, and certainly what we try to do at Silverfin, is have a couple of levers we can pull. Like, yes, we have training online, like the basic training. Do you need tips and tricks? Do you need change management support? That might be on-demand content. And I think there's a real drive across vendors to improve their on-demand content as the need for technology is quite rapid. But there also has to be levers in place where, if we know that a customer, if they get this right, they're going to be a customer for life and they're going to grow with us and they're going to be really sticky, then yes, that does justify investment from me to maybe give a little bit extra over and above an online course, right? And it's striking that balance. I don't think it's easy. I don't think there's one answer, but I think we have to be open to that adaptability.
Definitely. And with that adaptability, of course, like you said, some people will just be able to roll this out if it's maybe a smaller scale project, or if they've got experience of doing this in the firm, they might be able to manage that. But the challenge, I suppose, is you don't know what you don't know. So what would be great is if you can give a couple of red flags for anyone that's listening that might help them understand that maybe their project, if they're self-implementing, might be going off the rails a little bit. Like, what should they look for?
Yeah. The absolute number one that I think everyone should have, and we'll do it even pre-sale with our customers, is what is that vision? Like, are you crystal clear on what success is going to look like at the end? Because it's okay to have a vision, but that has to be tangible. Like, you have to be able to measure that and get to a point at which you say, yes, we've been successful. The only way we can do that is being really clear on what we want to achieve, but also understanding the milestones to get there. So success for me looks like, by the end of Q2, 50% of my clients identified for this project have already moved over to the new software, for example, and putting those milestones in place periodically as well, so that we can measure our success. We don't want to get to the end of 6 months and say, oh, actually, we missed it massively. You kind of want to be held accountable as you go through, right? You want to be able to check on how it's going. So that's absolutely like the number one.
Are there any others that that might creep up that might signify that you're sort of off track with things?
Yeah, I think, and again, it must come up. It comes up all the time on these, but it's your it's your people, and it's the change management piece, right? Like, it's always the hardest bit. I'm always saying to my team, like, we aren't there to really, the training's the easy bit. We're kind of there as that support network and to help guide our customers through making sure you've got the right project team. Have you got the right people working on your project? Because it's not always, when we talk about change management issues, it's really easy for us as vendors to say, oh, Bob in the corner has worked on one software for his whole life and he's going to be our biggest blocker, right? Like, he sits in the corner and he loves it. He does it every single day. So when we talk about change management, we talk about how do we win over Bob. I don't think Bob's the problem, because we know exactly what Bob wants. We know what he's used to, and we can use that to help change his processes and do that in a really structured manner. It's the middle ground. It's the people that maybe aren't wedded to one software or one way of working, but they actually also don't really want change, and they don't want the added investment of time and the added stress on their day job, that provide this undercurrent of resistance that we kind of ignore. But if we don't address that properly, I think that becomes a far bigger problem down the line than a Bob in the corner who, like, better the devil you know always, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the hard part about that is, if you read the change management textbooks, it's always about, well, paint a vision that everyone can get behind and sort of rally the troops behind it. But it sort of conceptually makes sense. But there's, I think, very few businesses where you can get everybody really inspired behind a goal. Like, for a lot of people, they just want to go to work and then go home at the end of it. So the idea of really getting them aligned behind the vision might be a pretty big ask in a lot of cases, particularly on its accounting software. So how do you tackle that? Like, how do you deal with that issue?
Yeah, I think we always have to start with that incentive, don't we? Like, what's in it for me? Like, we know what's in it for the business. We want to be more efficient. We want to safeguard our work. We want to make more money from the customers we've got. We want to free up time to be able to offer more advisory services. Those visions are really clear. You probably don't need me to come on site and tell you that's what your boss wants you to achieve. But actually, as a staff member and someone taking place, like, what is in it for you? And I think if we can start to drive that conversation through all of those layers, be it Bob, be it the person who loves new things, and all of those in the middle, you do start to get that buy-in. Now, one way that we try and do that with our customers is, when we pick a project team, we don't want all of your tech savvy people. Like, we want a couple of them, because that's great. But actually, we don't want all of them. We want some of the people who are a little bit resistant. We want some of the quiet people who just get the job done and really good day to day. And we want a Bob. And if you can get that group in a room really early on, make their voice part of that conversation, that vision really early on, to say, actually, what would make your job easier? Because they might not care about your bottom line profit. Like, it's not going in their pocket. But they might care that actually in January, I end up working till 8, 9 o'clock at night, or all of my clients that I'm responsible for front load, and I end up really, really busy at this time of year. And that causes me loads of stress at home. Okay, well then, how is what we're going to put in place, how can that help that situation? And trying to promote that conversation across the group, because it also means that within your project team, everyone understands everyone else's why. And that then feeds back to the vision that we've got from the top down. So it's like building blocks. Like, it's not about having one brick, it's about having 10, 20 upwards.
100%. And I always felt that it was the middle managers that we needed to target back when I was at Xero, because when we go back to that problem of scalability, I'm sure that if we could put an Aleisha in the room with every client and sit down and speak to every Bob, we get them there eventually, right? But there's not enough hours in the day to do that. So if you take almost a train the trainer approach and say, right, how do we give the middle managers the skills and the tools to go and promote change and drive that themselves within their businesses? It's sort of like they give the guy a fish versus teach him to fish, right?
Exactly that.
But that feels like a good way forward. But then I guess it's that common ground, and it's that middle area between what's the vendor's responsibility and what's the accountant's responsibility, which is just a really, really interesting topic, because both of them have got a lot to lose if it doesn't work, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And I don't think, like I say, I don't think anyone's got it 100% nailed. And I don't think there's a blueprint for it necessarily. I think it will depend on the customer, it will depend on the vendor, the appropriate experience and what's needed on both sides. But I think a really good question that vendors should be asking themselves and talking about with that middle management layer is, what is the chain of change and how can we influence it? Because it's not just me talking to you about change management and why this project's a really good idea. You then need to go and tell your team why it's a really good idea. And you need to get them bought in the same way I've got you bought in. And then your team need to go and talk to their clients and say, hey, we're changing the way we're doing things. This is why. And we need to take our clients through that change. And we need to understand it and believe it to be able to bring them on the journey. And that chain of change is the most important bit, because if it cascades down, suddenly you will still have barriers, of course you will. Change management it's not like everyone's going to wake up and say, oh, actually, yeah, this is amazing, let's go forward. Like, it's never that easy, unfortunately. But if we can identify them, it makes that a lot easier. Like, they become road humps, they don't become fences. It's so much easier to do. And I don't think as vendors historically we've put enough focus on that. I think historically vendors, it's been really easy to say, here's the training, there's the software, off you go. And if you want a long relationship, it's far, far bigger than, do they know how to use your software? Because that's the easy bit.
100%. And I remember talking to you about this at the time, and that idea of a chain of change feels like a really elegant way to bridge the gap that we talked about, which was that as salespeople, you're trained to go in and get the highest possible decision maker that you can get, so you can get a deal done. But the reality is then that it's the people on the shop floor that are much lower down the hierarchy. They've actually got to go and then do the stuff. So you've almost got to work your way up the hierarchy to get a decision, then work your way back down again to actually make it happen. And it's just, I don't think, like you say, anyone's really nailed that yet. And as you say, there's not really a blueprint. But if you and I were going to sit here and resolve to create an industry standard for this, what would be some of the non-negotiables you'd want to see as part of that? If this is going to be an industry standard for vendors to implement well, what are the key bits of it for you?
Well, and I mean, if you talk to other people at Silverfin, you'll probably hear that I do have quite a few non-negotiables. Don't ask them for this. But absolutely, before the point of sale, like the point of commitment at which we say, this is what we're going to do and this is what we're going to achieve, I don't want us to make that decision without looking at, why are we doing it? What problem are we solving? How are we going to measure whether that's been successful for the customer? What does success look like for them? Because success for us looks like ARR, looks like money coming in. They've signed their contract, fabulous. But that's no good for me if in 12 months' time they're going to churn and leave us as a customer because it hasn't worked. Like, that's actually a waste of 12 months of investment and time. So is it the right thing for them? What do they want to see that would deem it successful? And then let's work backwards from there. And sometimes that might be, they've got 5,000 clients that could come onto our software. Fabulous. Like, we're all seeing, all the salespeople are seeing dollar signs and already booking their next weekend away. But actually, realistically, we're not going to get all of those up, certainly not in year one. So what would that adoption look like that is most beneficial for our customer? Because if we get that right, the 5,000 will come. It will come in time and it will grow organically and it will be managed healthily internally on their side. And there will come a point where, as a vendor, I can take my hands off and that customer will be completely self-sufficient and bought in and manage their own change. But if we get that wrong, then we're never going to get to that point. So it's that investment of time and that investment from the vendor to make sure it's the right decision and not just chase a quick win.
I remember chatting to another Silverfinner, Phil Hobden, on one of the earlier episodes. And we were talking more about the vendor sales side. And it just feels like there's an inherent conflict in the way that we do things at the moment, which is vendors have to grow quickly to have attracted the investment, usually to get out of the gates. That necessitates, to an extent, a fairly aggressive approach to sales because they want to grow as businesses, which is fair and reasonable. But at the same time, you then find that a lot of the firms that use this tech have been driven by those incentives. So here's a big deal or a promo code, or we've got a talk at a big show and you must do this. This is the next big thing,
Mm-hmm.
And so much of the conversations we've had on this show have come back to people not being intentional enough around the projects that they're picking up in the first place. It's exactly what you're saying here. And I don't know what the answer to that is, other than firms maybe just slowing down a little bit, thinking about what they want to do, being on the front foot. But then there's problems with that because, like you say, there's no one sitting around thinking, what should we do next?
Yeah.
Vendors need to keep selling or they're going to disappear. So I don't know what the answer is, but it feels like if we could figure it out, everyone would end up much better off,
Yeah, and my view on it is like, and I guess I'm probably unique in that obviously I work alongside Phil, and I agree with a lot of his points and the challenges he sees as a salesperson. I obviously feel as his colleague, but also I've sat the other side of the fence and I've been the accountant that buys and looks for new software, and we are very risk averse still as an industry, despite change being so rapid, despite technology advancing so quickly. We are still very reluctant to try new things. And those decisions very quickly become very big decisions, right? When you're buying new software. And for me, I think the middle ground should be vendors should be investing a bit more time to understand what you as the customer really needs to solve, not just trying to lure you in with a lovely discount code. Like, we have to be better at that. And I think that is changing in the industry. Like, we don't see it like we perhaps used to a few years back. But equally, as a customer, your processes are going to need to change. If you're going to stay not even at the forefront of technology, if you're going to stay competitive with other practices and your offering and the changes that HMRC are going to be bringing and all those legislative changes, we have to be able to move probably a little bit quicker than we've ever had to before. And that means getting a little bit more comfortable with risk and a little bit more comfortable with change. And maybe that is, actually, this software might be really good for us. Why don't we invest a bit of time in giving it a go, whether that's piloting it, whether it's a phased approach. Like, we have to be comfortable with taking that risk and making that investment. And sometimes it won't be right for you, but that's also okay. Not every decision has to be right. And I think if we can get more comfortable with that, and probably there would be that middle ground of, we think this is going to work for us. I'd really love to try it and put some time into seeing if that will work for our firm. And the vendor saying, actually, yeah, I'm going to be really open in my communication with you and help you understand if it's good for your firm. Hopefully 9 times out of 10 it is. But also, if it isn't, we now know we're still further forward because we know it isn't. So why isn't it? What didn't it do that we need to do? Because actually that will inform us for the next decision we have to make. And it's just getting that, I think that comfort zone needs to, we all need to come out of it, right? And meet in that middle ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if there was anything else, any more points for our manifesto, I suppose, for our enablement manifesto for the industry, what else would you want to have in there?
You know what, another one that, again, I think if my team watch this back, they'll say, gosh, she moans about this all the time and now she's acting like she's really chill, and she's absolutely not. But another hot topic for me is around QBRs and EBRs. So quarterly business review, we call them EBRs, executive business review. They're the same thing. I think vendors, once you are a customer, we get into this habit of, we'll have a QBR. We'll just jump on a QBR every quarter. And it comes back to that appropriate experience. Is that valuable? Like, if it's valuable for you as a customer, absolutely, I will do you a QBR every quarter. But for some customers, it isn't. And I think we have to step away from having a tick box exercise because it's in the diary, and because that's not that, it's a waste of everyone's time. What I would far prefer is, actually, we're not going to do it quarterly. We're going to do it 6 monthly, because that's when it's more suits you for what you need. And the data that I want to talk about, my usage, my consumption, how my team are using it, what changes have been made in the platform, what other areas of the platform have I not looked at that might be useful. That EBR or QBR meeting has to be for the customer. And if you're not taking value from it, let's not do it, or let's change it. So you should be telling the vendor, actually, those first 4 slides where you gave me all that data, I do not care.
Yeah.
Because if it's valuable for you, you're going to show up and you're going to interact with me and you're going to give me really useful information about how it's going in your firm that's really valuable for me. And I'm going to be giving you information that you find super valuable. And it stops becoming this tick box exercise. It's another one of my bugbears really is, QBR. So that is something I would change. And I think we can customize to the customer to what is valuable to them.
Yeah, definitely. I think that idea of just going through the motions seems to be the enemy here, right? At all different stages and levels of these projects. But again, I can absolutely see where it's come from, because I know that for a SaaS business to scale, you need things that are repeatable, you need a system, you need a process. You end up inevitably creating these tick box exercises, right? Because you're right, okay, this is the way we need to do it, and it's repeatable, and we can then grow with it. So again, it just comes down to like, how do we solve that? And it may be that we can't always. It might well be that it's only a few customers or a few clients that are going to come, be really intentional, show us as vendors that they're prepared, they've got a good objective, they've got their head screwed on in terms of what we're doing, and then we can kind of give them the time. For others, there's a self-serve option that they can play around with, or whatever it is.
Maybe and does it come back to right at the beginning when we're setting that scene and that relationship with the customer vendor relationship is one we could have a whole nother topic on, right? Another day. And you and I could probably sit here and talk about it for hours, because I've got a lot of views. I know you've got a lot of views on it. But I think the biggest thing is honest and open communication at the start, and understanding what is the needed experience. What experience does that customer need to get to solve the problems they want to solve, or to get the efficiencies they want to get from the platform. And if you as a customer and I as a vendor build that relationship and have that common ground and that understanding from the beginning, this is what you want to achieve, these are your milestones that you're set out to do. At the point that you become a more established customer and you probably don't need to talk to me as much, those foundations are already built. So we don't necessarily need to be talking all the time. We don't need to check in every quarter just because it's month 3, month 6, month 9. Because that relationship's there, and if you need me, you know where I am. Yeah. But also, our time is precious, and I think it if you can set up that relationship right from the start, it pays dividends as you go forwards and outwards, because you're not just going through the motions. It's a case of, when I need them, they're there. When I talk to them, it's valuable. But other than that, it's BAU really, and that's what the vendor wants, and that's what the customer wants.
Yeah. And this goes back to something that I tend to harp on a lot, which is that the sales process doesn't end with an order. It ends when the customer's got their outcome at the end of it. And I know that was a real friction point for you and me and a lot of the other partner consulting team, was that you'd get a deal come in from someone, and then we say, okay, what are they trying to achieve with this project? And it was like, I don't know. We just, in some cases, not all, for anyone that's still working with Xero, it wasn't all the time. But in some cases, it was like, well,
we won't name names.
We will absolutely won't name names. But it's just they wanted to do it. And so then when you're trying to pick that up and say, well, how do we then make this work? You just sort of not got anything to latch onto, have you?
Yeah.
So that idea of having this one continual process, yes, with elegant handover points, I think is really important, rather than seeing it as a sales role and then an enablement role. For the customer, it's one experience, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And that plays a really big part in the relationship on the vendor side between salesperson and enablement, between sales and CS. It shouldn't feel like you're being passed from pillar to post. It should be. It should feel like you're getting the right support at the right time if the vendor's got it right. And also, if they haven't got it right, or you're not feeling like that, tell them. Like, you could say, like, Aleisha, I love talking to you. Like, love hearing about your weekend and love hearing about your dog. But actually, I don't feel like I need these meetings every month, like, because we're just catching up on life. And whilst it's lovely to do, I've actually got jobs to do. Tell them, and bring it back so that it is valuable. Because I guarantee you, your vendor will say, "Okay, like, completely get it. What would good look like for you?" That's all we've got to ask. And actually, it will probably be a lot more beneficial for both parties to do that. Rather than falling into this, like you say, going through the motions of, well, this is what the journey should look like, so this is what we do. And then everyone thinks, oh God, I've got that call. How are you? Yeah, good. How's your dog? Yeah, good. See you later then. See you next month, same time. I think that communication piece is the most important bit.
Yeah, because everyone wants it to work, right? I think sometimes it might feel like vendors just after a quick buck, but they really aren't. Like the cost to acquire customers for a
Yeah.
SaaS vendor is fairly significant. And so if you're going to churn off after a year, there's a good chance in a lot of vendors' cases, they'll actually make a loss on that.
Yeah.
So it is in everybody's interest to make it work in the longer term.
And the customer advocacy, like for SaaS
Yeah,
businesses, like we don't want customers who aren't happy. Like, doesn't fill me with joy. It's not good for our business if you're not happy and gonna churn in a year. Like, we want customers that are like, actually, we've worked really well. The CS team have been great. The product's been great, and they will then tell others, because that word of mouth is worth so much. So exactly as you say, it costs a lot to get a new customer in SaaS. And it's a big investment of time. It's typically quite a long sales cycle because there's a lot of big decisions that need to be made by a lot of parties. So we want to do best by the customer, because it's far easier to grow a happy customer than to try and find a new one and then make them happy and then keep them happy. So it's like a flywheel, isn't it?
definitely. And I love that point, just going back slightly to what you said a second ago about encouraging accountants and bookkeepers to push back and ask for more in that sort of deployment phase, I suppose. And what I love is that throughout our discussion here, there's loads of things that they can then go and ask for. Like, you've painted a great picture of what good looks like, and to give them an idea of a standard that they can go and push their vendors for and ask for. And exactly like you say, if you've got a good vendor that wants to work with you and they're a good business, they'll want to take that on board because they want to keep your business, right? So it's so important. But really appreciate your input there. Thank you, Aleisha.
No worries. I would say as well, the vendor, like, as much as we talk about the accounting industry constantly changing and you having to constantly change and adapt your processes, that is happening on the vendor side as well. Like, we are constantly reevaluating our customer journey. Like, are we giving the right support at the right time? Do we have the right touch points? Do we understand the milestones? Where are the gaps where I could maybe plug and help with more CS support? Your vendor will be doing that in the same way you're doing it for your customers. So that feedback is so valuable.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like we've only really scratched the surface there. We're almost out of time, so I will take you up on that offer of a second chat, and we can drill into these things a little bit more. But before we drop off, there's a little bit of a tradition where I ask everybody that comes on who they would want to play them in a film if anyone was insane enough to make one about our little corner of the internet.
Okay. Right. I think, because I think she's phenomenal and she could probably get my Kent accent down, Jodie Comer, definitely.
Okay.
Like, Villanelle vibes. I'm nowhere near as exciting as her, but I mean, I really wish I was. So maybe she could make me more interesting for the big screen. But I also think maybe Kathy Burke. She's so funny. Like, she just says it how she is, and I think, yeah, I would really like to see her portray me. Very different answers, but I'm here for both of them.
Both very good.
And I'll leave you to guess why I would pick those people, and if that says anything about my personality outside of work time. Who knows?
It's going to depend on the budget and the tone of the film that we're going for, but I love both.
Exactly. Is Aleisha actually a serial killer? Who knows?
Aleisha, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, ask any questions or find out more about your work at Silverfin, what's the best way for them to do
that? Always reach out on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way, or pop me an email. My email address, I think, is on LinkedIn. So I'm always happy to talk about customer relationships and everything, really. I'm a bit of a talker, as you might have seen.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you talking here, and thanks so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you.